Good morning. Can you turn your sound up a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, let's try this again.
Can you hear me now?
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little bit better.
Okay.
That's good. Okay. I'm just waiting until he's finished.
Okay. How are you?
Okay. My interviews are one on top of the other, and I did not want his speech to be on the recording.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so let's get this going. Good morning. Welcome back to Passionate World Radio Network. Distinguish yourself from the ordinary. And this morning, we are speaking to the second author from the International Miami Book Fair. And his name is Ibram Kendi, who wrote a book called Stamped from the Beginning. And it is a book about how racism became such a big deal in the United States. So good morning, Ibram. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I want to tell you that I read your entire book. And it took me about a week. And the reason why is that because I wanted to make sure that I really got what you were saying. It's not the type of book you just want to pick up, read randomly, and then put down and go on with the rest of your day.
Yeah, I would hope so, because I think the issue of racism and the issue of racist ideas is such a heavy and important issue. And I wanted to, of course, wanted to make the book as accessible as possible so people could truly get through it. It's readable. But I also wanted people to be reflecting as they read the book, particularly reflecting on their own ideas, particularly reflecting on their own nation and the state of race relations in this country. And so I'm actually happy that, you sat with it, and I'm hoping that many people sort of sit with it and reflect, as they're reading it.
Yes, and the thing that struck me the most was this is the type of book that must be introduced to our school system, whether it's in the public school system, the charter schools, and even teaching kids at home, because it's something like everything else needs to be taught at an early age.
I could not agree enough. I think that would be, of course, a dream for the findings and even many of the stories in Stamped from the Beginning to enter into the regular curriculums of our schools. But we also know that, some people talk about the classroom as the most politicized space, and it's an extremely controversial task to get anti-racist material in classrooms. But it's certainly something that I hope, because I think, we have students, we have young people, just like older people, who are basically taught racist ideas from very early ages. And then they grow up thinking that there's something wrong with black people when there's certainly not.
And it's something that makes you wonder why on earth it hasn't been done sooner. Certainly when I was growing up, I'm a 50s kid. And when we were growing up, yes, the communities were segregated and isolated. And I don't think we had an African American in our school system until I was in 8th or 9th grade. And we were amazed to see that there was somebody else who had a different skin color. So in that respect, the African American child that was put in there really came into a situation that was good and was bad. And I can't imagine how difficult it really must have been for him to integrate himself and to get along with everybody.
Yeah, I could only imagine, especially because, we, unfortunately, in this nation, even though we talk about ourselves as a multicultural society, even though we talk about ourselves as valuing diversity, in many ways we're not necessarily taught to value diversity. We're taught that difference is hierarchy. And we're taught that there are specific cultural standards that we should measure other people from. Clearly, usually people measure other people from their own standards, which ordinarily is going to create a situation in which you bring difference into a new space. People are going to look down upon that difference or not understand that difference, or denigrate that difference. And black people have had to bear the brunt of that when they enter into white spaces, and they've also felt that they had to represent the race, because in that type of situation, people aren't that exposed to many black people, and I'm sure that black individual knew that, and they of course did not want the people that they were exposed to think in a negative fashion about black people.
He did a very good job. He was a good student, and he managed to stay out of trouble, and for teenagers to stay out of trouble, I don't care what color they are, frankly, they all seem to do the same bad type of things should the occasion arise. But the one thing I did find that was disturbing is that I had lived down in Houston, Texas for 15 years. And much to my astonishment, the Civil War was still being fought down there.
Yeah, the Civil War, I mean, it's to a large extent still being fought. We still have so many Americans who think that the North has won out, and that the South is not able to exercise its so-called state rights, because apparently state rights, these people think, was the main reason why the South fought the Civil War. And of course, for them, it wasn't slavery. And, that just flies against the historical record. The Vice president of the Confederacy, stood up and gave a speech and talked about the cornerstone of the Confederacy, the philosophical and ideological cornerstone of the Confederacy was the belief. He stated that black people were inferior and black people should be enslaved. And so, it's pretty clear. It doesn't get any clearer than that. Leader Alexander Stevenson standing up saying this is the cornerstone of the Confederacy.
I've also found that I got the impression that you did not feel that America as a whole country has really improved how they look upon the black person. Whether you're from the North or from the South.
Yeah, and I think that's one of we've taught this. We've been taught this steady history of racial progress. So over the course of American history, black people in the nation has just steadily increased. Basically steadily experienced racial progress, and so, but I found that actually has happened, but there's also been a simultaneous progression of racism. And we've had racial progress and the progression of racism happening simultaneously. And the way that it happened is because, very simply, when we would discard and eliminate one racist idea, a new one would be produced and created for the new set of circumstances in that moment. So to give an example, I think that the post-racial may be the most sophisticated racist idea ever created. What it does to people is it says to them that racial discrimination and racist ideas do not exist. But racial inequities and disparities still persist, and they see that. So then it compels them to blame black people and conjure up all different types of racist ideas about the ways in which black people, there's something wrong with black people, to explain the persistence of those racial inequities.
Do you feel that a lot of the problems that they're having here in America is going back to across the Atlantic to where it originally came from?
Well, I think I wanted to show and stand from the beginning that, racist ideas did not originate in the United States. As some scholars have made the case, and it's also the case that racist ideas have circulated across the world, and so American thinkers have produced ideas that have circulated across the world, and non-American thinkers have produced ideas that came to the United States. And so, all of that was simultaneously happening, and I tried to chronicle that in the book.
Yeah, I did read that, and I was just wondering if you felt that the crisis was getting worse because the United States is not isolated in how it really views the African Americans. And certainly in the current political process that is now going on in this country, I feel it's just going to get worse if the wrong people are elected into the wrong places in the government.
And I think that has oftentimes been the case, and so politicians in particular have used and utilized and deployed racist ideas to manipulate voters into electing them. And that there's a long tradition, and I call it tradition because it truly is a tradition, in American politics, to utilize racist ideas specifically to manipulate white voters into voting against their self-interest in many ways.
Do you see any way in which something like that can be discontinued, or at least break the habit of doing something like that?
I think the way to prevent that and stop that is to create a situation in which racist ideas no longer gets people elected, and people and politicians who are savvy recognize that. And so I think one of the things that's seemingly happening now is the demographics of the nation are changing such that it's not as easy for people to simply run on a racist platform and get elected. And I think, I think politicians will probably realize that, but I don't think we can educate away in mass the racist ideas of people, and then that will prevent the politicians from from basically manipulating those. I think it's more creating an environment in which politicians can't win through racist ideas.
So where do you plan to go from here? I mean, what's your next big book project? Do you know?
So I've sort of been all over the place trying to figure out one. I know I'm already finishing a book that's on Black Power in New York, and so that's something I've sort of been working on for a while. I'm also thinking about writing another follow-up to Stamp from the Beginning that has to do with the history, a similar sort of narrative history of racism, but I'm trying to decide on what topic. And so stay tuned.
I was just curious because I would love to see you do a book on the history of racism within politics, within the government, from the inception of this country, because I firmly believe that people need to be aware of the true history of their country. And they're certainly, the kids are not getting the true history of this country. I understand that the winners write the history books. All you have to do is open up the history books and see it. And I'm a lot older and wiser than I was when I went through school during the 50s and early 60s. I wasn't too appalled by when my son was raised through the Texas system of education. He got 5 years of Texas history. And I have to say that if it hadn't been the fact that I schooled him on the side, he would have gotten a very lopsided view of U.S. history and Texas' place in it. So I would welcome such a book because I really think it's due.
Yeah, I mean, I think I should certainly think about that, because I do think that there is, as I stated earlier, this long history between, in a very literal, intangible, and material sense, in which racist ideas have been deployed to put people in office, and racist policies have been utilized to keep in office. And so, I mean, there's that clear sort of history, and I think it's important for people to know that history, so that they won't continue to be fooled by these politicians. And because literally, politicians have made fools of us over several generations, by fooling us with these ideas that are not true, and then putting them, basically allowing them to get along. And that's one of the things that's happened over the last 40 years. Particularly, you've had politicians who use affirmative action, welfare, and crime to manipulate voters into voting for them. Then these people get into office and they slash a number of programs and resources that are beneficial for working people and the middle class. And now the middle class has suffered. And now you have a tremendous amount of income inequality. And people are like, what happened? They didn't even realize that they were sort of hurting themselves.
Well, I think the large majority is due to the fact that most people who vote are very ignorant of, I guess, what their power is. But even more important than that, they're ignorant of how the system works in the first place. And they have no concept of what it really means to go and get a particular bill enacted and to pass into law. And also the fact that you have laws still in effect from the 18th and 19th century that has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in the 21st century, yet they don't get rid of them because it proves advantageous to them to use them on occasion.
Yes, and I think that's extremely important. I'm happy you pointed that out, because even with Stanford in the beginning, I found that this history and line of thinking that we've been taught, that the origins of racist ideas are ignorance and hate, and then you have people with these racist ideas who are the people that put into practice racist laws and policies. That line of thinking is actually ahistorical. And in fact, what has happened is people have instituted racist laws. Politics out of self-interest. And then they have deployed racist ideas to justify those laws that they put in place to benefit them. And then they circulated those racist ideas, which is what led to our ignorance and hate. And so it's racist ideas producing ignorance and hate as opposed to the other way around. And it's racist policies producing racist ideas as opposed to the other way around.
And then you just create cycles. Ibram, please tell everybody where they can find you down at the International Miami Book Fair, if you're on any panels, readings, book signings, and also where they can reach you on the World Wide Web.
So, in terms of the World Wide Web, I am on Twitter, and so my Twitter hashtag is Dr. Ibram. That's IB as in boy, RAN. I'm also have a website, Ibram.org. Ibram.org, and of course I'll be at the Miami Book Fair, and I understand that they're having an evening with the National Book Award winners and finalists at 6 p.m. on November 18th, so I should be there. And then on November 19th, they're having another reading with the nonfiction award winners and finalists. And so I'll be on that panel. And that will be at 2 p.m. in room 3314, building 3, third floor. And then on the 20th, on Sunday, I'll be on a panel called Racism in America. And that panel will be at 12:30 p.m. in room 8302, building 8, third floor.
Ibram, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to hear this stream all over again, please go over to PassionateWorldRadioNetwork.com, Facebook.com/PWRN Network, our Twitter.com at CAULDWELL. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember that there's still more interviews coming for the International Miami Book Fair, held November 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you. Ibram, thank you very much for appearing. I certainly will like to speak with you further about your book.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
All right, you too.